Landon, here we go. He says, what's up, TRC? Hope you're all having a good Friday Eve. When doing paint correction on a car, which is your preferred style? Do you go by the standard correction speed, 1 to 2 inches per second?
Not exactly.
I've never heard that term.
You guys use the scrub method.
1 to 2 inches per second. I've never heard that term. So, Anthony and I scrub cars, literally with a polisher. We can cross-hatch. In some videos, you see us cross-hatching. In other videos, you see us moving a little fast. What I try to do is create kind of a scouring effect on the paint to remove the heaviest amount of defects first, and then I'll drop the speed down a little bit. Not much. I'm usually at a 4 or 5. I drop it back down to a 3 or 4, and then I'll work a spot and go over a spot a couple times until I get the correction that I need out of it. And once I see, sounds weird, I also can see through my machine, through the product on the surface, and I can see my defects, whether or not I got them out. I usually don't stop and wipe and look. I just keep going until I know what I'm watching is the consistency of the product being across the surface. And if it catches on something or it looks funny in a certain way, then I can tell that I haven't gotten full correction.
And by moving the tool more, you're reducing the amount of heat in any one
And I'm
place.
keeping that heat down.
And
if I need to slow down, I'll slow down in a little area and work it, and then I'll bring it back up again.
For a lot of people who are just getting into this, they may have heard in the past, oh, you need heat to cut that's not how this stuff works these days. The cooler is better.
What about you, Anthony?
Get more cut.
Well, I find it interesting. The way you see through the pad is kind of like in that movie Wanted, where there's only a few people that can bend
curve the bullet.
Yeah, curve a bullet. So it's kind of the same concept there.
I see through the pad.
No, generally speaking, I mean, it's the same it's the same thing. If I'm removing defects, it'll be kind of more of a scrubbing motion to kind of figure out, because I can get into there, knock that off as fast as I possibly can, and then I can finish out the area with like a crosshatch or anything like that if I need to. But I think that for the most part, in terms of like speed, I'm typically running, I mean, my basis is probably like a 4. That's pretty much like my standard, a 3 or a 4. But however, if I'm on a curve or if I'm somewhere where I'm not getting enough pad rotation, I'll bump it up to a 5 or 6 to wherever I really feel comfortable. I'm not going to ride an edge on a 6, but I'm going to try to dip into a curve and make the most of the throttle there on the polisher. And so you'll kind of start to, once you really get into it, it's not a situation where you set it and forget it and just use the one speed. You're going to be constantly changing speeds on that machine depending on where you're at on the vehicle.
Especially the angles that you're working at.
Especially all the angles. It's just one of those things to where you almost can't even think of it that scientifically. You have to think of it based off of feel, based on correction, based on what you could see through the pad when you're polishing. And there's so many variables. It's the pad type that you're using. It's the compound. It's the polish. It's the type of paint that you're working with. You can't always just set it to a certain speed and have that be it. That's not always the answer. And so get good at kind of bouncing back through speeds. You'll do it often. But you'll find that typically if you can work within that 3 to 4 range and then bump it up to 5 or 6 for vertical panels or anything to where you're getting into like a recessed area, you might need that. Or you simply change the machine that you're using and go from maybe a 5-inch machine to a 3-inch or go into a 3-inch to a 1-inch depending on your needs. So
everybody starts somewhere. Having some basic rules you can adapt and then start to work on the fly. That's how a lot of people start. So that's okay. But eventually you want to get to that point where you can make adjustments, micro adjustments on the fly.
For the most part, Levi, when we were polishing just the other day, there are certain things where I say, okay, I can fit this 5-inch machine into here, but I'm going to stop, set it down, switch to the 3, on the fly and keep working it in and things like that. Levi will fit a 5-inch machine, I think, pretty much anywhere on the car. I think he'll do door jams with a 5-inch machine.
If I have to.
So
no, it's because
it's like a school bus in a
that's true.
garage.
That's true.
You'll get anywhere with a 5-inch.
And that comes a lot of just knowing the machine's limits and how you work that tool. And if you can get that tool to do the things that you need it to do, because honestly, a 15 can't really, like the door on the Civic, there's that trim piece.
Yeah.
Technically, if you get that pad down to get the correction, maybe 1/2 inch to 1 inch around that trim piece, you actually won't get proper correction there because the orbit and the pressure that you're trying to put to keep away from the molding will actually limit you.
Yeah.
you have to know how to hold the machine and how to angle the machine and watch your temperature so you don't melt that trim.
Yeah.
But you can get that correction all the way up to the edge. Most people will stop,
Switch into a
grab
small
a
machine.
3-inch or a 1-inch and work those line works. But you're right. I'm weird like that.
Well, and there's always a risk there too. For example, I mean, and it happens to everybody. I mean, you could say I can fit a 5-inch machine in that area, or I can ride that particular edge, or I could cut that in with that, and it's all fun and games until you get that pad on there, and for some reason, the compound decides to dust, or it decides to fling, or maybe you didn't get all the water out of the pad washer, out of that pad when you go to take it on there, and next thing you know, you've just created a Picasso effect all over the vehicle, and you go, oh crap, I probably should.
Or you're rocking a 21 with a 5-inch kamikaze backing plate, and maybe you accidentally take a chunk out of your own car.
Yeah,
that can happen too. But it's
crazy how some people
there's a
decide
reason that there's different tools
to do that.
And I will use a 3-inch if I can't get correction the right way.
I'll plug something really quick. I'll plug it. I don't care. The Flex, the PXC80 or PCX80, what's it called,
thing.
right?
Yeah.
That freaking machine. So when you're on a 15 or you're on a 21, that is hands down the easiest machine to have right next to you, right? Running the same compound, the same polish, the same style pad. It's battery operated, and it's got a crap ton of power. You could literally pick that thing up on the fly, basically reducing a trip and also reducing a power cord if you don't need to have an extra machine plugged in. It's different if you have a cart setup, or if you have a situation where you have the 3-inch under you on a stool or a 3-inch next to you. That's totally fine, but you can definitely cut back the amount of travel you have when you have that battery operated machine or something next to you to pick up on the fly and go. And so you have to remember, just because you're switching the machine doesn't mean you need to wipe off the product. You can keep that product on the panel, jump straight into that next machine and work that area, and you'd be one and done on that door or on that quarter or on that fender, whatever it may be.